So we're going to go ahead and begin. I'm Dawn Reevy, CEO of Excellence in Analytics Consulting and Coaching, right? And so we are here today on our part four of our Renew and Restore series. So welcome. Today we are talking about how to self-care as a leader, right? So the last several weeks we have been diving into this restore and renew mentality, right? For leadership, we're starting off a new year. We want to really we want to restore and renew as leaders so that we can show up as our best selves for the people that surround us, right? And so on part one, we talked about creating that silence, really creating that margin, creating that quiet in our lives to get quiet, to get silent, to get connected, and to really think about the big picture, that macro piece, right? That was part one. So if you missed that, go to our YouTube page. One of y'all throw the playlist in there, and you can go ahead and click on our YouTube page. Make sure that you subscribe so you get all of the YouTube subscriptions directly going to you. All right. And so you don't miss a beat. So part two was embracing impermanence, right? And so really talking about how change is normal. Change is evolving us, right? Change is happening all the time. And so we really want to embrace change and not be afraid of it. Embrace the change and the shifts and the evolution that comes. And so it's really inevitable. So if you missed part two, go back to Restore and Renew on part two, and you can learn about that and really get inspired in terms of shifting and changing and flowing, right? And then part three was all about embodiment. Leaders get into their bodies, right? And so this is really a challenging thing because a lot of leaders, including myself for a long period of time, I was in my head. I was analyzing and thinking, and what's the calculated risk, and what's the pro, and what's the con, and what's the, our return on investment, and all of those things, right? And so part three really shifts gears a little bit and talks about embodiment and how we really, as leaders, need to be in our bodies. We need to be quiet and listening to our bodies so that we can be proactive in our efforts and hear things that our mind doesn't always hear, that maybe our body hears, right? And so getting quiet and being embodied. And so this part four, the last part of this series, and then we're popping onto a brand new topic, but the last part of this series dives into self-care as a leader. So thank you, Michelle, for posting that YouTube. And for the rest of you who are listening to this replay, we're going to make sure to post that YouTube in the notes so that you can just go ahead and click on it and subscribe. All right. And so this part is all about self-care as a leader. And the piece that we're going to talk about today, you might be like, why is she talking about this one particular thing, right? This one activity, this one thing that we're going to talk about today is instrumental in your leadership development. It's probably one of the key things that any leader I know, any leader I've researched, any leader that Lewis Howes has had on his podcast, any leader, Tony Robbins, Lisa Nichols, Oprah, any leader that is successful in leading other people, they do a couple of things, a couple of habits, right? And there's one habit that we're going to talk about today that every leader I know does. All right. And so I want you to stay with me on this because we're going to dig deep into it. And the activity that all of us leaders do is read. Okay. We are constantly thirsty for more knowledge, right? Constantly thirsty for more knowledge. And so successful, people in leadership, we want to find role models. We can actually find quite a few role models in the books that we read, right? And so when you think about it, success leaves clues. You don't have to do all of this alone. You don't have to uncover every single rock, overturn every single rock by yourself. There's people who have put their collection of massive amounts of years and years and years of study. They've compiled it and put it into these books that we can digest and take away exactly what we need to accelerate our own progress. And so today we're going to get into what books not to waste your time on, what books to dive into, and then physically how to get the most out of books. All right. And so leaders read. That's really the bottom line. And so there's limitless mentors in books, right? You have Joe Dispenza books. You have, so I'll actually give you a list of books. If you want a list of books, stay tuned. I'm going to give you a list of my favorite books that every leader needs to read and needs to read now. Now, you can read through like eyeballing, right? You grab a book and you open it up and you read it, right? You can also do audible reading. I consider both of those true value, right? So I had a client the other day said, isn't that cheating? Isn't that cheating if I don't sit and read the book, if I'm listening to the book? And no, it is not cheating. It is maximizing your time. So sometimes on your ride to work, or, you might be in the waiting, like for me, sometimes I'm waiting for my daughter to get out of drama class, listening to something audio and taking notes on it is just as good, right? And so, I want to share a concept with you that might actually shake you a little bit. And my question is, are you addicted to producing every day? That's going to sound really weird, right? Those of you who are part of our community, you're like, Dawn, you're always talking about creating impact. You're supposed to create impact every single day. And yes, but are you obsessed with it? Are you so obsessed with creating a product every day that you're not invested in your long-term success? Now, so are you addicted to producing, right? Something tangible every day. So does reading feel like, it's not really productive, right? Because there's nothing coming out of it. Does reading feel like that for you? I know for me, for many years, analyzing, writing grants, doing financial development, doing crime analysis, doing all the reading that goes along with assessments and curriculum development, like all of that work, I did not want to read when I came home. I was tired, right? And so that was my excuse. That was my excuse. And so, when you think about those results that give us the long-term impact that we're looking for, some of those things, we talked about meditation is one of those things, reading is another one of those things. So creating silence, that embodiment piece, meditation, and reading are the key things that leaders do. I can't tell you, I never not have a book. I have a book in my car in case I get caught in my car. I have a book on that counter because I'm, I like a certain type of book when I'm sitting in the morning versus when I'm sitting at night. In the morning is where I like to do my heavy kind of reading. If someone gives me something to read at night, I'm like, my eyes are going crazy. I can't look at the darn thing until the morning, right? And so, you might have these different books in different places, and that's okay too. But if you're saying to yourself, I don't have the time to read, go ahead and put that in the chat right now. Is that you? Are you saying to yourself, I don't have the time to read? I see a bunch of you popping on here. Let me know. Is that you? I don't have the time to read. And I'm so busy all the time. Busy. Anyone else hate that word busy? Right? Because to me, it means that you could be busy with anything. You could be busy folding laundry all day. You could be busy picking up all the little, pieces of lint in your couch all day, right? And so what does busy really mean? I much rather be productive than busy. And so when we think of productivity as leaders, we really want to be thinking about two levels of productivity. We want to be thinking about the immediate piece, that impact piece that we're always talking about. And then we want to be thinking about that long-term, sustainable, longevity, right? The legacy, that legacy piece. And that involves reading, learning, and growing. And so the best minds put a ton of thoughts into just a few pages, right? So like here's my book, Bigger Than Data. This is years and years of, building analytical capacity, doing the analytics, teaching the analytics. This is years of information is right in here, as well as a ton of links to downloads and free products and free templates and all kinds of stuff, Bigger Than Data, right? And so if you haven't already grabbed this, go to excellenceinanalytics.com. And you can go ahead and grab yours. For in the US, it's $19.99, and I'll send you out a hard copy. And if you're outside of the US, you get an e-copy. Well, everyone gets an e-copy, right? And so go ahead. Thank you. Thank you, Caroline, for posting that. Michelle says, I sometimes am a little busy. Yes. And I put reading on the back burner. And so Michelle, so many people do this, but we want to really compartmentalize different areas of our life of success, the immediate success and the long-term success. So the same thing with financial planning, right? You might say to yourself, I'm going to, save money for my long-term retirement, right? Maybe in this bucket, you're saving money for a tattoo that you want, right? And then in this bucket, it's more long-term. It's more, what am I going to do when I retire? Am I going to have enough resources, right, in that retirement, right? And so, and so being able to, I can't quite read all of that, Caroline. I have actually finished. You're in a place where you can read without falling asleep. Fantastic, fantastic. You got to pick the right time of day for you, and that is definitely key. And so I'm going to give you a list of my favorite books for leaders to read. All right, for leaders to read. So the question is, how much should I read? When should I read? Like, we know that the greatest leaders are constantly filling their minds. How much should I read, and when and why? Well, when you read, you actually improve your mindset, right? You grow at an accelerated rate. When you are reading, you are growing at an accelerated rate, right? And you're also gaining confidence. When you have knowledge, you're gaining that confidence that, that you can deliver things that maybe you couldn't deliver yesterday to the table, right? So you're delivering, gaining that confidence. And you are becoming a more capable version of you. You don't have all the building blocks. I don't have all the building blocks. But the more I read, the more I involve myself in programming and education to get me to the next level, the better I show up. Right? A lot of us think, oh, college is over. We're not going to go study and read. And I say this all the time. I don't care if you're in college or not. You are always learning, always filling your mind, because you want to show up as the best version of you. All right. And in order to do that, you have to fill your mind with other ways of thinking. Now, you can listen to a lot of things, but there's something about that mind connection, like the reading connection piece, and this other component that I'm going to share with you in a moment, that really nails in the lessons, right? Nails in. Because you can scroll all you want on Facebook and be like, yeah, I learned that, hemp seeds has protein. Well, that's great, right? But really diving into, to something that's enjoyable and digestible for you to read, is going to give you a much deeper understanding and much more confidence, and it's going to improve your mindset and help you show up as your best self. Okay. So how much should I read? Think about this equation for a second. So I wrote this down. Think about this equation. If you read 10 pages a day for an entire year, right? That would be 3,650 pages of yumminess that you are putting into your mind. That equals about 18 regular sized books, which are about 200 pages a year, right? So 18 books a year is about 10 pages a day. 10 pages a day maybe will take you 15 minutes, right? It's not extensive. It's not like I'm saying read an entire book. I'm saying just small bite-sized compound effects, right? Compound effects. The second thing is, so how much should I read? The second thing is, when should I read? Well, if you're exhausted first thing in the morning, you let me know. If you're exhausted first thing in the morning, that's not going to work for you, right? That's not going to work for you. It's different for everybody. So the when is important. If you are, slamming all day and then 9 o'clock at night you go to read a book and you pass out, that's not the right time for you, right? You really got to figure out, when can I read during the day that's going to give me the ability to digest the materials that I want to digest, right? And so for me, I know first thing in the morning when my house is quiet, after I've had my tea or coffee or both, right? After I've had all of that, then I sit and I learn. That's my Robin Sharma thinking, right? Great author, by the way. Where I sit and I learn for 15 minutes. I say, what am I going to learn today? And I dive into my readings. And so, Hal Elrod wrote a book, The Miracle Morning. And so, looking at habits of highly effective people and millionaires. It might be Millionaire Mindset or something like that. I forget. I wrote it down. I'm reading quite a few books right here. So The Miracle Morning, that's what it's called. And so he talks about, leaders reading every single day. That's just part of the Savers, SAVERS, the Savers millionaire mindset mornings, right? We read every day. So you're silent, affirmations, you're reading, you're getting exercise, you're writing. Like that's kind of the reflection piece, right? So these are the things that he studied thousands of leaders, successful leaders. This is what they do. All right, this is what they do. We're handing it to you on a silver platter. This is what they do. And I can tell you that from my perspective of reading, I absorb so much, I gain so much value, I'm able to provide so much more, I'm more confident, and reading gives me the ability to dive deep into something interesting and creative and unique, deliver it, and also just grow as an individual. So the when, yes, Caroline, the when is so important. So you're really going to figure out when is a time that you like to read. It could be at lunchtime. Maybe you take your lunch break and you're off and you're reading for 15 minutes. It doesn't have to be long, right? Just get those bite-sized amounts in. I will warn you, don't be a professional development junkie. If you are a professional development junkie and all you do is look at videos all day and read all day, and you're not really implementing, maybe not all day, but that's what you do, and you're not really implementing anything that you learned, then why bother? Why bother, right? So what I will say is there's two things that you can do to ensure that you are optimizing, that you are maximizing your time when digesting these beautiful materials. So the number one thing you do is before you pick up any book, you say to yourself, you pick up the book and you say to yourself, what do I want to get out of this book? What do I hope to gain? That's what you say. What do I hope to gain from reading this book? So if you're saying to yourself, I don't know, Caroline told me it was a good book and I should read it. Like it's not going to be the thing for you, right? But if you say to yourself, well, I've really been wanting to grow my analytical skills, or I've really been wanting to become a stronger analyst, and this book's going to help me do that, then that's when you read this book. For me, when I read The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod, a beautiful story, by the way, he's an amazing miracle of a person. I said to myself, I want to make sure that the things that I'm doing in the morning reflect the routines of, highly effective and efficient people. Right? And so I want to identify gaps that I might have and tighten them up and improve them so that I can be successful just like the people in his book. So I have an intention when I'm going into the book. When I read the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, to me, I really wanted to understand master level thinking. I wanted to know what are the key things that I need to be thinking about as a leader of my life, right? That's what I said. When I read the book Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty, I really wanted to know how to simplify my life in a way that brought me fulfillment, joy, and career excellence. Right? So you got to make the intention before you read the book or you're not going to be connected. You got to make the intention before you read the book or you're simply not going to be connected, right? So when you're not connected, then all of a sudden you become a self-help junkie, and you're not really like a reading junkie, and you're not really absorbing those things. So that's the first thing. Create the intention around the book that you choose. It could be one book. You could be like me and kind of have a couple books going. Sometimes I get, spazzy with that and I want to sit down and just finish one of them, right? But the second thing that you can do that's going to create much more excellence for you is you can have a notebook. Mine's way over there. But you can have a notebook with you when you're reading. Have a notebook with you when you're reading. Or if I do both. I scribble the heck out of my books. I write down after each couple of pages, or maybe if I'm reading a page and something really strikes me as, hey Dawn, you got to do this, I will write it in the margin, right? Here's macro level thinking, come back to this point. Or I might write it in my notebook and say, page 75, talks about the physical routines, look at yours and review, right? Creating notes and actions around the book. I mean, these are people like this book and other books. These are people who have sat and looked at what are the key things that someone needs to know. And then it's right there for you. So if you are investing your time in reading the key things, then grab that notebook and walk away from every single book with key takeaways. Key takeaways and action steps. Key takeaways and action steps. And then, don't jump onto another book until you've implemented the action steps, right? Until you've implemented the action steps. So key takeaways and action steps. And that's kind of where that scribing gets in. So scribing is another thing that amazing leaders do, right? And so this whole series has really truly been around what amazing leaders do, successful amazing leaders do, right? And so scribing is another one of those things, right? The silence, the embodiment, the affirmations, like all of that, the physical movement, the reading, and now the reflecting piece. Scribing is the thing that leaders do. And so one way to incorporate scribing into your schedule is to really read and then document, like, what am I going to do with what I learn here? What am I going to do? Yeah, exactly, Michelle. Key takeaways and action steps. Exactly. So thinking about if they reference another book that's of interest to you, I have a little, I'm like book, I title it book, and then I highlight it yellow so that when I flip through the pages, I know that when I go back, I'm going to read that book, right? Or take a look into seeing if I want to read that book. If references and things like that, right? So key takeaways from the book. So you're journaling down key takeaways, what's striking you, what can you reflect on, right? And then what action are you going to take as a result of all the time that you've spent reading that book? And so, a lot of folks will, just kind of read all these books and then do nothing with them. Interpreting and reading and understanding and reflecting on them is absolutely key to success. And it's very restorative for leaders. Like this is a way to be restorative for yourself, okay? And so I'm going to share with you some of the key books. If any of y'all are interested in some really great books, go ahead. If you have a really great book, write in the comments what you feel it has been an instrumental book in changing your world, right? And so some of mine are, of course, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. That's a wonderful one. The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. That's a really thick one, so you might have to read chunks. And that brings me to another point. Do not feel like you have to read cover to cover. Do not feel like you have to read chapter 1 before you read chapter 5. Go into the book saying, what do I want to get out of the book? And in that, float around. If chapter 1 is boring as heck, then float around to number 2. And if chapter 2 is boring as heck, then decide, I might not want to read this book, right? So you do not have to stick with the exact order of the book. You can decide, what do I want to get out of this resource, right? And have your little notebook there and maximize your time and go to where you get that information. So if you don't want to read about, different sections, then don't. You don't have to read cover to cover. I formally give you permission. Thank you, Caroline. She says bigger than data, obviously. And she really liked the Culture Code too. Yeah, that Daniel Coyle, that's a great book. I was actually working through that book with a client this morning, and he talked about vulnerability, and we're going to have another video on that. That's going to be fantastic. So thank you, Caroline. So you don't have to read cover to cover. In fact, if you pick up a book and you decide it's not for you, don't feel like you have to finish it just because you picked the darn thing up, okay? It's okay to let it go and say, this is no longer serving me. Or maybe not right now. Maybe right now it's not serving me, and feel free to let it go. So we have a couple of key tips. Let's just review. We have a couple of key tips. Number 1, read. Number 2, pick a time of the day that works best for you, right? So, really figuring that time piece out. Number 3, I don't know, maybe I'm going out of order here, but number 3, have your little notebook ready with you with your book, right? Have a notebook and grab key takeaways and action steps, right? Number 4, you do not have to read cover to cover. You don't even have to finish a book if you don't want to. Other than this one, you might want to finish this one. But you don't. You don't have to finish a book. If you're already aware of a certain part of it and you're like, I really don't need that in my life right now, then you don't have to read that. You don't have to go in order. Take out of a book, create the intention, and grab out of the book what it's intended, what you want it to deliver to you. All right. And then I guess I'm going to call this number 5 is numbers don't matter. Before I used to think like, wow, I'm going to read, 40 books a year. And that number was in my head, right? 30 books a year, 20 books a year. And I used to be so impressed with these people who would read all these books. The number doesn't matter. The number does not matter. If you are reading through books and gaining no value, no application from them, then they're for nothing, right? But if you're reading a book like Think and Grow Rich, I've read multiple times. Bob Proctor, who recently passed away this past week, I believe. He's the brilliant mind. He's written many books. Think and Grow Rich, Thinking into Results was his program with Gallagher. And so, just a brilliant mind. You might want to read their books multiple times. You might be at a space where, on day 1, here's where you were and you were gathering out that information, right? But maybe on day 31 or maybe 301, a year later, you read it again and you get so much different value from it. So it technically is just one book, but you've continue to gain value from this particular book. All right. So I guess that would be number 5. If anyone's counting out there, go ahead and write it in the chat so I can keep track of these key skills when you're reading, because leaders read. All right. So really recognizing that numbers don't matter. It's the quality and in-depth and application of these books that really creates the greatest impact in your life as a leader. Okay. You show up as a better person. You show up as your best self. And when you show up as your best self as a leader, you are more connected to, to the outcome, the process, the people. Like all of this is just more enjoyable, and people enjoy you more too. All right. So going on to list a couple of the favorite books. I'm reading a book right now. It's called The Everyday Hero Manifesto by Robin Sharma. He also wrote the 5 a.m. Club. Phenomenal book. I love that. Robin Sharma is a wonderful author. The Buddha and the Badass by Vishen Lakhiani. He's wonderful as well. And so that is a really great work-life harmony book. The Culture Code, of course, we already mentioned that, by Daniel Coyle. Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey is a phenomenal book. He actually reads it himself. So if you want to get the audio, Green Lights is a great book about his life, as an actor, but so many life lessons, which he's really just wonderful. Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty. The One Thing by Gary Keller. It was a great book for those of you business owners, or for those of you folks who just want to stay focused on the thing, like you just have all these ideas. That's a great one. Breakfast with Buddha by Roland Marullo is a great book. Margin by Richard Swenson. So for those of you who are looking to really create that space, that margin in your life, right? Like everything's all congested and you're looking to kind of space things out and create some of that silence. That's a great book for that. The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy is a wonderful book to really move you forward in understanding how what you do now can impact you later on. So it's a really good book. Everyone, The Vivid Vision by Cameron Herold, who also worked on the Miracle Morning book for entrepreneurs. There's a whole series of them. The Vivid Vision by Cameron Herold is great. We actually used that exact model of the Vivid Vision to create the Vivid Vision for our business. So where are we going in 3 years? That was a phenomenal book. The 4 Agreements by Miguel Ruiz is a beautiful book. I actually got that for my 25-year-old daughter last year, the 4 Agreements, and it really is about the law of attraction, right? That's a great book. Atomic Habits by James Clear. What are the key habits that people implement, that successful people implement? That's a wonderful book. Abundance Now by Lisa Nichols. Phenomenal book. I love that. And there's just so many others. And if you're thinking of some right now that you really love, go ahead and plug them in. And every summer, our community has a book club, right, where we dissect a really quality book. So if you want to be part of that book club, keep your eyes open for some of that as we come up with that during the summer, which feels like it's forever away, but it really is not, right? It really is not. So, reading overall is going to give you the ability to show up as your best self, to gain that confidence, and don't be afraid of it. I was so just like, I cannot read. Don't be afraid of it. Just grab something and start digesting, right? Start digesting, start defining. And if you're an analyst, we have this book for you, Bigger Than Data. And of course, we're coming out with something for the supervisors pretty soon. Yes, Michelle loved last year's Summer Sizzler. We do call it the Summer Sizzler Book Club. So that's phenomenal. And so I'm just going to wrap up with two things that I want to make sure that you all know about. We want to make sure that you know about our blog. We have a new blog that has been really revving up. Every Friday, we come out with a new post. So if you go to excellenceinanalytics.com, there's a little blog over there, and it's a lot about holistic wellness, about building capacity, professionalizing yourself. There's a lot of my personal stories in there as well. So we got that new blog. Make sure that you're taking a peek at that. If you're on our email list, you should be getting that. And then the Holistic Health Routine, that is a free tool for service-based providers that we've put together to help you to begin a holistic, well life. Being a service-based provider, law enforcement, fire, EMS, service-based industry folks like hospital, emergency room folks, you're often going into the fire, right? You're often going into the fire. Your cortisol levels are jacked up because that's your line of work. You're going into your real-time event center at 2:00 in the morning for a murder, right? Like, you're doing all of these things. Maybe you work in dispatch and you're listening to people call in or emergency after emergency, right? And so maybe you're a crime analyst and you're reading your burglaries, murders, rapes, robberies, and maybe you're working with a high intensity environment. Maybe you're the chief and you're in charge of leading all of this, right? Maybe you're the fire captain and you're in charge of leading your fire folks, right? And so EMS, going to the scene. You're the one that goes to the scary scenes, right? Instead of running away from them, and you help those people. The reality is, service-based industry is a high-intensity industry, right? And so we really want to make sure that we are taking good care of ourselves. And as leaders in those industries, it's often extremely hard to take care of ourselves. I was working with a bunch of emergency room supervisors, right? So the head of surgery, the head of all the different heads, neurology, radiology. And we got them all together in one of our leadership masterminds, right? And they hired us to work on productivity for them. And what we found was we actually ended up shifting the whole thing and helping them work on leadership of themselves, because they're so used to taking care of everybody else that they are often the last person that is helped, right? They're always pushing down their own self, their own health and wellness. And so we created this master holistic wellness routine. Go ahead and we'll have that link for you in there as well. It's a free link. It's a free document. And there's audio and videos that go along with it. That's 100% free, especially for service-based providers. A little gift for you to focus in on your mindset, your practices, your routines, your nutrition, your way of life. And so our goal in that document, in that tool, those set of videos, is really to help up level you so that you are taking really good care of yourself as a leader, and so that you can show up as your best possible self. All right. So we want to make sure that you know about the blogs, that you know about that free download along with the videos that come with it. It's 100% free for all of you. And so this concludes our Renew and Restore series, and we're going to come back and really dissect that holistic wellness piece during one of our future sessions. So thank you for joining us here today. Thank you for being part of our community. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page, and we look forward to sharing all of this yumminess with you week after week as we continue to show up so that you can show up as the CEO of your life. Thank you so much.